Do you ever feel like your teenager is pulling away from you and you have no idea why? You probably assume it's just puberty, hormones, a phase. But behind that distance, there might be something you're doing every single day without realizing it that's actually pushing your teenager further away. And the worst part? Most of these things feel completely normal. You probably did at least one of them today. Let's start with something you probably said this week without thinking twice. 1. Comparing them to someone else. Have you ever said something like, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Or maybe, "Your cousin got into honors classes, you know?" Seems motivating, I know. You're just trying to push them a little. But here's what most parents don't realize. When a teenager hears a comparison, they don't hear motivation. They hear ranking. They hear, "You're not enough as you are." A 2019 study published in the Journal of Family Psychology found that adolescents who were frequently compared to siblings or peers reported significantly lower self-worth and higher levels of resentment toward the person doing the comparing, not the sibling, the parent. That's not encouragement. That's a slow drip of, "You're not good enough." And every time it happens, your teenager files it under one category. They wish I was someone else. And if you think that one cuts deep, wait until we get to number 6. That one might be the thing your teenager remembers for years. 2. Dismissing what they feel. Ever watched your teenager get upset about something and thought, "That's not even a real problem"? Maybe a friendship falling apart, a bad grade, being left out of a group chat, and you said something like, "You're being dramatic," or "You'll forget about this by tomorrow." Here's something that might surprise you. To the teenage brain, those problems are real. Neuroscience research from the National Institute of Mental Health shows that the adolescent prefrontal cortex is still developing. Teens literally process emotions with greater intensity and less regulation than adults do. So when you tell them they're overreacting, you're not calming them down. You're basically telling them that what they feel doesn't count. And the next time something big actually happens, they won't come to you, because they already know what you'll say. And hey, if this is starting to shift how you see some of these moments, hit like and subscribe so we can reach more parents who actually want to understand their teenagers on a deeper level. 3. Going through their phone without saying anything. Have you ever picked up your teenager's phone while they were sleeping, or checked their messages when they left the room? Most parents see this as being responsible. You're keeping them safe. You have every right. You're the parent. But here's the thing. To a teenager, their phone isn't just a device. It's their social life and their privacy, all in one place. Going through it without telling them doesn't feel like protection. It feels like surveillance. And the real damage isn't that you found something. It's that they found out you looked. Because in that moment, your teenager learned something about your relationship. Privacy isn't safe here. And speaking of things parents do without realizing, there's one habit coming up later in this video that's even more damaging than this one, and you're probably doing it every time you argue. 4. Correcting them in front of their friends. Does your teenager ever have friends over and say something wrong? Maybe exaggerate a story or act a little too loud? And you step in, you correct the fact, or you call out the behavior right there in front of everyone. Just being honest, right? Here's what's really happening. In developmental psychology, social standing during adolescence is tied directly to a teen's sense of self. Researchers at UCLA's Social Cognitive Neuroscience Lab found that social rejection or embarrassment in front of peers activates the same brain regions as physical pain. You thought it was a quick correction. They felt it for the rest of the night. That correction didn't teach them anything, except to make sure you're not in the room next time. 5. Making every decision for them. Do you choose what your teenager wears to family events? Pick their extracurriculars? Decide when they eat, study, sleep? Seems like structure. Seems like good parenting. But here's what most parents don't realize. Every time you decide for them, that's one less rep they get at figuring it out. And practice is the whole point of adolescence. Developmental psychologists call this autonomy support. And the research is clear. Teens whose parents gradually hand over decision-making show stronger executive function, better emotional regulation, and higher confidence in early adulthood. Teens who never get that handoff, they either rebel hard or they freeze when it's their turn to choose. You thought you were keeping things on track, but you were actually taking away the one thing adolescence is supposed to give them: practice. And that has a cost they'll pay when you're not around to choose for them anymore. 6. Bringing up old mistakes during arguments. This is the one we've been building to, and if you're being honest with yourself, you've done this. Picture this. Your teenager breaks a rule. You sit them down. And somewhere in the conversation, it slips out. "This is just like last time. Remember when you did the same thing in 8th grade? You always do this." You think you're showing a pattern. You think you're building a case. But your teenager hears something very different. They hear, "Nothing I do will ever erase what I've already done." Psychologist Dr. John Gottman, whose research spans decades of family dynamics, calls this kitchen sinking, bringing everything, including the kitchen sink, into a single argument. And in his studies, it's one of the most reliable predictors of emotional shutdown in relationships. Not just romantic ones, family ones too. When you bring up old mistakes, you're not correcting behavior, you're telling them something they already suspect about themselves, that in your eyes, they are their worst moments. Your teenager doesn't need you to be a perfect parent. They just need to know that when they sit back down at that table, you see who they are right now, not who they were last year. Because every time they walk back into the room, they're asking you the same question. Is it safe to try again? If your teenager has been saying, "I'm fine," a lot lately, you need to watch this next, because that phrase almost never means what you think it means.